Welcome to the Love Your Life and Yourself podcast, the weekly show where science meets soul and mom chaos meets mind mastery. You're not just a mom. You're a woman with dreams, a career, a body that needs care, and a soul that craves more. This podcast is your permission slip to stop surviving and start thriving in motherhood, health, career, and stress resilience. I'm your host, Dr. Ashley Rath, and every week we bring you actionable insights and transformative conversations to help you create a life you truly love. From evidence-based wellness strategies to authentic self-discovery, we'll explore what it takes to thrive through expert interviews and real unfiltered stories. Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to Love Your Life and Yourself podcast. I'm Dr. Ashley Rath, your host, and I am so excited to be here with you. The birth of the podcast. How we're going to start today is I want to take you back to one of the most pivotal mornings of my life. It's super raw, real, messy, and human, I guess you could say. And it's the reason why my book, Love Your Life and Yourself, and this podcast are even a thing. I was 6 weeks postpartum with my third, Faith. And that morning, I had agreed to speak to our local community college. It was a virtual event, but I was one of their keynote speakers for about 200 to 250 people. Why I agreed to speak at 6 weeks postpartum might be another boundary conversation we have to have, but I had agreed because, like many of you guys, I really, really value both being a mom and a wife, and I really, really value my career and my work and what I do. And so I think that's part of the reason why I decided, yes, I really, really want to do this gig. I love speaking. I love being able to share my story. But I was 6 weeks postpartum. And y'all know how that goes, right? If you're a mom, like you got things still coming out of orifices. And at the time, I was actually nursing Faith when this story happened. And at 6 weeks postpartum, you're probably not the most mentally clear, right? You're sleep deprived, you're mentally exhausted, your hormones are still completely just all over the place, or at least it is for me. I am by no means the most graceful postpartum woman that there is. I see a lot of women in my office who have so much more grace than what I do postpartum, but that is not who I am. And so at 6 weeks postpartum, like I'm still kind of a hot mess, to keep it short. However, that morning I agreed that I was going to step into my career woman side and speak. And so that morning was the first morning that I really had to get dressed in a very, very long time. So the boys were going to go to daycare. I have 3 kids, Henry, Bo, and Faith, which I'm sure you'll hear more about later in the podcast. But my oldest, Henry, is your typical firstborn, right? You tell him something, he normally follows the rules, just does it, really no complaints, just is a rule follower. My second, he's a little bit spicier. He likes to cross the line. When you tell him there's a line, I'm going to just cross it a little bit more like me, little bit at his own pace, right? And so I'm nursing Faith, and I tell the boys, Tyler, my husband, is bringing them to daycare that morning. And I tell the boys, okay, Dad's ready to go. Go get your shoes on. Go get your coats on. Let's rock and roll. And Henry, firstborn, typical firstborn, right? Okay, Mom, have a great day. Bye. Love you. Goes, gets his shoes on. Bo, on the other hand, tell him, hey, Bo, time to get going. Dad's bringing you to daycare. Mom's got to get dressed this morning. Love you. Go get your shoes on. He's like, Mom, I got to tell you something. I was like, Bo, we don't have time for this. Let's go. We have to get going. Dad's going to bring you to daycare. I have to get dressed and shower and, look presentable for my talk. We got to get going. And he's like, Mom, I got to tell you something. And I was like, Bo, let's go. Get your shoes on. He's like, Mom, I gotta tell you something. And this happened for a couple times back and forth. And as it continued to happen, I'm sure most of you have been there. You can tell your patience is like decreasing. It's going down, keeps going down, keeps going down. And you can feel the frustration and the exhaustion and rising. And I could feel that in me. Yet I needed him to get going. Like he had to go, I had to get dressed. And in that moment, it went back and forth a few times. But in that moment, he's like, Mom, I gotta tell you something. And I lost it because I told myself I was going to lose it if this kept happening. And I was like, Bo, get your shoes on. And he crumbled to the floor. And not like a whiny tantrum, 3-year-old tantrum, but like a defeat. Like he just crumbled to the floor and just started crying. And I wasn't even frustrated or mad or exhausted. I mean, I was still exhausted, but I wasn't even mad or frustrated with him anymore. I just I realized it was a moment of realization. I just paused and I remember closing my eyes and saying to myself, Ashley, what are you doing? And it was in that moment that I realized I cannot do this anymore. I am burnt out. I am exhausted. Yes, I am high functioning and um you know, I on the outside it looks like I'm holding it together, right? Like you're overperforming, you're high functioning, you're doing it all, but emotionally exhausted, yet we look fine. However, we're not, and I wasn't. And I paused in that moment and I was like, Ashley, what are you doing? And I decided from there on I was done. I was going to change this trajectory. I could not keep rushing. I could not keep hurrying. I could not keep overcommitting. And yes, if I would have continued down this road, my health definitely would have tanked. And it had. That was the most unhealthy I had ever been in the last 7 years prior to having kids. Yes, I realized like I was childbearing, I was sleep deprived, I nursed all my kids, but still, in that moment, I had lost myself. My patience was at a near zero. If I would have just literally stopped and listened to what he had to tell me, which I still don't know. I get that question after I tell this story, and people are like, well, what did he actually have to tell you? And I was like, I don't know, which is it's really sad to think about of like how many moments have we missed because we're not there, because we're not present, because we're exhausted, and we literally have no other bandwidth but to just do the things, to just go through the motions, to just run the kids to the practices and the games, and to just feed the kids, and to just like try to get a moment of sleep and rest and quietness. But we do all the things and don't even realize like we're just going through the motions and have zero joy while doing it. And that's literally where the birth of this book, Love Your Life and Yourself, comes from. And the birth of this podcast. I wanted to break free from any sort of limiting belief that I have to give up what I want at any cost. My health, my emotional state. I want to be able to have it all, but not necessarily do it all, right? I wanted to love my life and myself every single day and be able to do it with joy and presence and happiness. And it sounds too good to be true, right? Like, how can you have it all? Like, how can you truly love every aspect of your life and yourself? Well, you can, for the most part. Obviously, there's going to be crap that comes up and hard stuff that you have to get through and really crappy experiences that you don't know why they happen, but they do happen. And how do we grow and learn and thrive from them instead of carrying it around like baggage? right? That's what this whole thing is about. So that's why my book and this podcast are here is I want you to truly, truly be able to say, I love my life and myself. And how do we do that? So, what we're going to do is we're going to break down every episode with some science, with some realness, with some stories, with some rawness. And we're going to talk through all the crap, all the shit, but all the good and the joy and the love and how we start to transform maybe the hard stuff and the stuckness into clarity and joy and happiness and resilience, right? Because that's what it's all about. Like, we're always going to have stress in our lives, but how do we become more resilient to it? How do we become even healthier in the midst of chaos? And is that possible, right? Can you truly be happy and healthy and resilient? I think so, right? I believe we can. Now, we can't do it alone. So, because we can't do it alone, you're going to hear from me personally, but throughout this podcast, we're going to have experts come on. We're going to have real conversations, tools, inspiration. We're going to be talking about all the things: burnout, stress, your nervous system, epigenetics. We're going to get a little bit nerdy sometimes, your hormones. For those of you who don't know me, I am a chiropractor by nature. I am a functional health provider. So I see a lot of like hormones, balancing hormones, etc. Um, and then I'm also a wife of a farmer, so we farm as well. We have beef cattle and grow all sorts of crops. We have corn, soybeans, sweet corn, peas, kidney beans, organic sweet corn. And my background is I would say a little bit different than most. So I grew up on an organic dairy farm, which is where some of my, I would say, more unconventional background comes from, especially related to health and wellness. And we were organic way before organic was sexy. And I say that with a little bit of humor because like today you go into a grocery store and you can see pretty much organic in every section, and that just wasn't the case when I grew up. We transitioned from conventional farming to organic when I was about 10, 11 years old. And back then, organic was not mainstream. Like, I got made fun of in high school for eating non-organic foods. My peers would be like, "Hey, Ashley, this isn't organic. Are you going to eat it?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, well, I don't have anything else to eat. So yes, I'm going to eat non-organic food." And not that I don't eat non-organic food. We eat a mix of super healthy foods, but also I love me some queso and chips. So I'm all about moderation. But anyway, my background of growing up on an organic dairy farm gave me a perspective that most people don't have about true health and wellness and how do we get well. So if you are wanting, I would say, less mainstream medicine, non-traditional health, like, stick with me. We're going to talk so much about getting to the root of why people have the symptoms that they do and really what true health and wellness is, because to me that's where my roots lie. And there is a parable or a quote, I don't know who it's by, but they say you can have 1,000 or 10,000 dreams if you have your health, but if you don't have your health, you have one dream, right? It's to get healthy. And so when we have these conversations, I am going to go back to the roots of our health, because if we are not healthy, and this is in all areas, if we are not healthy emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, in our relationships, if we're not healthy in those aspects, we can't even achieve the next goal that we want to achieve, especially talking to you high achieving career women, right? or the stay-at-home mom who wants to do more, wants to have the garden or the sourdough, right? I'm dabbling into all those things. And so we can't necessarily do more unless we fill ourselves first. And that's really what this podcast is all about. We're talking again about your identity, like, and the identity shifts. We're going to talk about marriage. We're going to talk about sex, time management, joy, freedom. But we're also going to get nerdy. And that's really where I want to start today, because it's going to be the basis of really all the conversations that we're going to have. And it's how we fuel ourselves. And it all comes back to how we're wired. And when I say wired, I'm talking about your nervous system. Our nervous system has two different separate systems. We have a central nervous system and a peripheral nervous system. And our central nervous system consists of our brain and our spinal column. And within that central nervous system, you have two separate systems. If you're nerdy like me, it's sympathetic and parasympathetic, or I'll refer to it as our stress response or fight or flight. That's typically a more common title that sympathetic system is called, like the fight or flight response. And then the parasympathetic is also called our rest or restore or healing response or system. And so our stress response is not bad, but what happens when we're suffering from anxiety or shame or guilt or a heavy toxic load or physical traumas, lack of exercise, or crappy skincare, or environmental toxins, or just mental emotional stressors, right? So there's all these different stressors that are going to ignite that stress response. And if we get stuck in that stress response, that's where the cascade of all of these, I would quote, symptoms start. When you talk about burnout, exhaustion, fatigue, brain fog, memory issues, when you talk about lack of clarity, any sort of physical symptoms like headaches, low back pain, migraines, upper back tightness, stress, we have to start back up the stream further. We have to go upstream and understand the nervous system and how it's playing a role. And we're not going to talk about the nervous system every single time. We're going to talk a lot about mindset, but mindset roots back to the nervous system and how you're wiring and what part of your brain is firing. Are you firing in your prefrontal cortex, which is where your critical, logical, conscious thinking is? Or are you in your hindbrain where you're just in survival mode because you have so much going on with not a ton of help maybe or support in your life, or you just don't even know where to start? Right? So this all roots back to the nervous system. So that's why this very, very first episode here, I'm touching on the nervous system and how we need to start regulating both sides of it. So when our stress response is ignited, what happens, or the sympathetic or the fight or flight, whatever you want to call it, what happens is your heart rate goes up, your cortisol levels go up. We're going to touch on cortisol in another episode. Your blood pressure increases, your breathing increases, you have more insulin resistance, and you have more bone loss. You have decreased concentration, digestion, short-term memory, hormone balance. You have decreased testosterone, metabolism, and serotonin. So there's all these challenges and health responses, but it all roots back to your nervous system. So when we're talking about, burnout and exhaustion, we have to understand, how is that physiologically happening in our body? And if you truly want to have more joy and love in both your life and yourself, what has to happen? Right? We have to start changing our thoughts and where our brain is firing. We have to start seeing our world in a different way. And that's where I get super jacked up and excited, as you probably can hear in my voice, is that this stuff is so freaking powerful. And I'm so excited to share it all with you. So on the other side, where we actually start healing and growing and restoring, not just from a health standpoint, right? This is from a financial standpoint, because if you can't think that you will ever be financially free, you won't be. Your thoughts have to first start, which is part of a health, right? Your mental emotional side is part of health. It is part of love. If you don't love your body, if you don't have that identity yet, which we're going to talk about again in later episodes, are you ever truly going to be healthy? Right? So it all starts within this structure of our nervous system and how we start to rewire that nervous system again from all aspects of health, from our physical, from our mental, from our emotional side, from how we literally think and parent our marriage. Like it has our relationships, it has an effect on all the aspects. And so when we start to fire in the opposite of stress, in that rest, healing, growing, restorative state, what happens is our digestion improves. We start to heal. Our heart rate goes down. Our cortisol balances out. Our blood pressure stabilizes. Our breathing slows down. We have better function from an insulin and blood sugar standpoint. And we actually can concentrate better, right? Who doesn't want that, especially in really all aspects? Concentration, vitality, energy. Oh my gosh. You want to talk about energy. Like, this is where I see the most amount of challenges within our society. I can tell you, like, I would say over 90% of the people that I see in my office are tired. They wake up tired, they go to bed tired, and then in between those tired, they're thinking about naps all the time, but even if they do take a nap, they're still tired. And then they try to wake themselves up with coffee, or at night, they're so freaking wired that they try to numb themselves with alcohol. And it's this toxic cycle that we go through. So, how do we actually start changing ourselves from a root cause, right? From the inside, not just treating symptoms. And again, when I say symptoms, this isn't just physical. This is mental, this is emotional, this is our finances, this is our social life. This is who we hang out with. This is our friends. But it all comes back to the nervous system. Because as we start to regulate, as we start to become aware, right? Awareness is key. We can start getting healthier. And as we start getting healthier, that love towards ourselves starts coming. We start enjoying life. And it's not just, oh my gosh, when I get this, then I'll love my life. When I get the lake cabin, the new kitchen, the spouse, the child, the the gig, the new office, the car, etc. Yes, all those things are awesome and amazing. But I'm telling you, to truly love your life and yourself, we have got to start rewiring our nervous system, our thoughts, and our mental emotional state. And no thing is going to change that. Nothing from the outside. We live in an inside out world, not an outside in world. No government, no president, no new thing is going to change that, but we have to start looking from the inside. And that is what this podcast is all about. We're going to get real and raw. I'm going to share with you all the stories, um, all the rawness of my like weird farm life slash entrepreneur running a business mom life. And then we're also going to bring in all the expert guests to have some real conversations and to give you actual tools that you can use and start to implement, because it's just a choice, right? Once we start becoming aware of where we can start to make changes, then we start to make action changes, and then that's where the results come after that. So, I know I gave you a lot of information on this first episode, but I want you to understand where I'm coming from of that realization with Bo of that's where it starts. You have to start by awareness. And that was that moment of I cannot do this anymore. And it was like, what am I doing? But I just can't do it, because really we're these high functioning, overperforming, emotionally exhausted humans who look fine, but we're not. And we're going to dive in to all of the things from motherhood to work to business to entrepreneurship to relationships to social life to health to happiness, to stress resilience, and all the things. So if you enjoyed this, I want you to share it with a friend. I am so excited to be here with you. I can't wait to dive into all the topics coming up here next week. With all the love, continue to love your life and yourself because it's a choice. Thanks for tuning in to Love Your Life and Yourself. I hope today's episode gave you one more tool or one more truth to help you thrive in your health, happiness, and resilience. Remember, loving yourself isn't selfish, it's leadership. And it's the foundation for building a life that actually feels like yours. If this spoke to you, hit that follow button, leave a review, and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. And if you want to dive even deeper, grab a copy of my #1 best-selling book, Love Your Life and Yourself. It's the heart behind this podcast, and it's helped thousands of women step into a life they actually love. You can find it at drashleyrath.com or through the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care of you and keep choosing to love your life and yourself.